Imagine this: ships loaded with Indian goods heading for American ports, and halfway across the ocean, a new rule drops: 50% tariffs. Overnight, everything from Indian textiles to jewelry becomes twice as expensive for American buyers. Factories in Surat and Tirupur hit pause, exporters panic. But here's the twist most people miss: Trump didn't hit all India's sectors. Two of India's biggest exporters, smartphones and pharmaceuticals, were completely exempt. Together, they are worth around $20 billion, nearly a quarter of India's exports to the US. So while one half of India's export engine screeched, the other half kept humming. And that's what makes this story fascinating. This video isn't just about economics, it's about leverage. Because tariffs aren't random, they are pressure tools. We will look at why Trump is using tariffs again, how India got caught in the crossfire, what's happening behind the scenes in trade talks, how Indian government is trying to soften the blow, and what these 50% tariffs mean for India's future. Let's start with the bigger picture. Trade wars aren't new. Back in 2018, Trump used tariffs to make the point that America was getting a bad deal from the world. It became part of his brand, America First. Fast forward to 2025, he's back, and this time the target list includes India. India sells about $86 billion worth of goods to the US every year, roughly 18% of everything it exports. In return, it buys only $45 to $47 billion worth of goods from America. That trade gap, roughly $40 billion, makes India an easy headline in Trump rallies. So, why is Trump doing all of this? Trump's tariffs are political theater with real world consequences. He argues that America's $1.2 trillion trade deficit proves other countries are cheating America. By slapping tariffs on imports, he says he's protecting US workers and forcing trade partners back to the negotiating table. But tariffs are taxes. They make imported products pricier for American companies and consumers. So, why do it? Because tariffs are visible. They create a villain and make action easy to show on TV. And if you're campaigning on making things in America again, that's powerful optics, even if economists roll their eyes. So, how did India get caught in all of this? India wasn't supposed to be the bad guy. It's a US ally, a tech partner, a counterweight to China. But politics doesn't care about friendship, it cares about numbers. In 2019, Washington already removed India's GSP trade privilege, saying New Delhi protected its market too much. That tension never really went away. So in 2025, when Trump's new tariff round hit, India landed on the list. And the results were immediate. Gems and jewelry exports to the US crashed 54% in a single month. Seafood exports dropped 33%. Textiles and apparel slid 13%. Factories that depended on US orders scrambled to reroute shipments or cut shifts. But remember that plot twist. Pharma and smartphones, worth 8.7 and $12.3 billion, escaped entirely. Those exemptions cushion nearly a quarter of India's exports to the US. That's why economists describe the shock as severe but survivable. So, how is India responding to all of this? India's government chose quiet negotiation over public retaliation. Officials called the tariffs unfair, but instead of matching them, they opened talks. Because a tit for tat trade war could hurt Indian exporters even more. The Commerce Ministry announced emergency credit lines for exporters and an export promotion mission worth roughly $270 million to keep small firms afloat. There's also a refund scheme, basically on export cashback, to offset some taxes and duties. Then comes the big structural play: production linked incentives or PLI. It's a plan to make India a manufacturing hub. The government committed 1.76 lakh crores, about 20 billion US dollars, to attract companies building everything from smartphones to solar panels. It's already paying off. Apple and Samsung now assemble billions worth of devices in India, much of which goes to export. So even if traditional sectors like jewelry shrink, electronics are becoming India's new export backbone. Now let's do a diversification reality check. Every Indian policymaker loves the word diversify, but the numbers tell a harder story. In 2016, the US bought 16% of India's export. By 2024, that share had risen to 18.3%. So, despite years of speeches, dependence on the US actually grew. India has signed trade deals with the UAE, Australia, and UK, and talks are underway with the EU and the New Zealand. But these markets haven't yet filled the US gap, and trade negotiations take time till they are actually considered as done deals. So diversification is happening, just not as fast enough. Now let's see what's happening in the trade talks. Behind closed doors, both sides want a deal, but on different terms. Washington wants India to open its farm and tech markets and scale down on discounted oil purchases from Russia. Delhi calls that non negotiable. Energy security for 1.4 billion people isn't a bargaining chip. India currently buys about 1.6 billion barrels of Russian oil every day, worth roughly $50 billion a year. And that's the sticking point. Negotiators have floated a compromise. Reduce tariffs from 50% down to around 15 to 16%, similar to what the USA grants allies like Japan and South Korea, if broader issues move forward. But until someone budges on the oil question, exporters are waiting. So, what does the future look like? Let's zoom out. If 50% tariffs stay for a year, India could roughly lose 4 to 5 billion dollars in export, and that's about 0.4% of the GDP. That's serious, but not catastrophic for a $4 trillion economy. The real risk isn't this year's loss. It's losing buyers permanently to Vietnam or Bangladesh, where tariffs are just 25%. At the same time, India's success stories show a path forward. Pharma continues growing globally because of quality and price. Electronics are rising fast thanks to PLI. And India's service exports, IT and consulting remain untouched by tariffs. So, yes, there is pain, but there is also momentum. This trade war isn't just about India. It's about a world shifting from globalization to economic guardrails. Every country is redrawing its map of trust, who they buy from, who they sell to, and what they are willing to risk for independence. India's challenge is to turn this moment of pressure into proof that it can stand on multiple legs, not just one. Because relying on a single buyer is never a strategy, it's a liability. So, can India survive this 50% US tariffs? Yes, but survival isn't victory. India needs three things to win this: diplomacy to close the deal, diversification to spread the risk, and domestic resilience to keep making what the world wants, no matter who raises tariffs. If it pulls that off, these tariffs won't be remembered as a setback, but as a shock that forced India to evolve into a truly global exporter. If this helped you understand what's really happening behind the headlines, tap like, subscribe, and share it. And tell me in the comments, should India fight tariffs with its own or outsmart them by finding new markets?